Good afternoon, folks. We're just going to give it a few more seconds to see if some stragglers pop in before we get started. But thank you all for coming to our Career Tip Tuesday session. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Today at Career Tip Tuesday, we're going to be covering all things references. For starters, my name is Abigail Kinnanen. I'm one of the career specialists here. So excited to talk about this topic today. By the end of this presentation, you will be able to identify appropriate references and distinguish which contacts should be avoided and who should be asked. You'll be able to demonstrate how to properly request permission from a potential reference, and you'll be able to explain when and how to submit references during the hiring process. It's a little bit different for every job that you'll apply to, but this presentation should give a general gist of what you can expect. But I always like to start with why does this matter? Why are we taking time to talk about this? And that's because references can play a very major role in your job search and application process. They validate your application materials. So, you have a resume and you have listed former employment on it. Well, these are the folks probably that you have formally worked with. They can also confirm your skills and work ethic, provide some insight into your personality that might not have been visible during your interview, or if they do a reference check before your interview, help employers and recruiting managers know what to expect once they meet you. And it can help employers feel confident in hiring you. Sometimes for us applicants, or even for an employer, the job search process can feel um, kind of kind of slow and kind of fast at the same time. Slow in that you spend a lot of time waiting to hear back and waiting to schedule things, but fast in the sense that you may only interact with someone once or twice before you agree to work with them. So references can give employers another verification of, hey, yes, this person is like what they seemed in their resume. So who are we asking to be our references in a job uh, interview setting? We want professional contacts ideally. These are former employers, former managers or supervisors, possibly coworkers or clients that you have worked with. So I know there are some folks that do some client-centered work, and having a positive reference from someone that has actually paid for your services before is really, really impressive. Or if you don't have any relevant experience or you just haven't worked in a while, any academic contacts can be really valuable. So any instructors that you've had here at Greenville Tech, or anyone that you have had ideally in a higher education setting as opposed to just maybe some K-12. But these can be professors, teachers, or even counselors that you've worked with. And then the last section are those volunteer or maybe activity contacts, coaches, mentors, leaders in your community. These are fine. They might not necessarily be as powerful as someone who's professional or academic, but they still serve the purpose. It's just important that when you're considering who you ask to serve as a reference, you're asking, can this person speak specifically and positively about my performance as an employee? You'll note that I've been really hammering in this professional, professional, professional. And that's because we want to avoid asking friends and family members, or anyone who just can't speak professionally about your work. You may have worked for a parent or an uncle, um, or anything like that, especially if it's a family business. But it's important to know that when employers get this information and they see maybe that you share a last name, or the relationship is disclosed, that there might be some bias in this relationship that could impact the reference that is given, that employers like to steer clear of a bit. I'm not saying that you can never list a family member or a friend as a reference. I don't recommend it. It's also important that you consider whether or not someone can remember you, if it's been a while since you've worked with them or for them. I wouldn't ask anyone who might give a neutral or lukewarm review of you. We really want some standout positive recommendations and someone that you haven't spoken to in years. It's important that you're always choosing quality over convenience with resumes, or sorry, with references. And just because know someone really well or speak to them all the time, that might not mean that they're the best. But these are just some things to think about before you start asking folks. If they haven't heard from you in 4 years, they might not know what you're up to. They might not even really have a fair grasp of who you still are as an employee. Be prepared to share some information to your reference and about your references to employers. So for each reference, it is important for each reference that you give to an employer, it's important to include that reference's full name, their current job title, the company that they work for, their email address, ideally a professional email address. This is something I would clear with your reference of, hey, what email address, what phone number would you like for me to share? Because I know a few folks who really only want their work information shared, and there are some folks who are totally okay with their cell phone being given out. This is something that you should check with your reference before you share it with a potential employer. And then a brief description of your relationship. So, former supervisor, former coworker, former instructor, current instructor. All of those things are good. Some employers may only ask this of your reference. It just depends. Everyone's a bit different. So I've been talking about references and references and references. Where are we doing this? Where is this coming from? Several years ago, it was appropriate to list your references on your resume. You would apply for a job, give them your resume, and you would also have your references listed on there so they could go ahead and reach out to your references. That is no longer a standard practice in the application process. So if you do have references listed on your resume, I recommend that you remove those. Resumes nowadays, employers are looking at a lot of them very, very quickly, and a reference on your resume doesn't tell employers what you have done. Obviously, if they call them, your reference will tell them what you've done, but a resume, you've got really limited space. And so you want to make sure that the most relevant and impressive information is there, which does not include someone's name, job title, and phone number. Typically nowadays, references are requested from employers, and this is usually later in the hiring process. So if you apply to a job and you notice that they don't ask for your references, that's pretty normal. Some folks actually don't get asked for their references until after the first job interview. So don't be scared or worried if you apply to a job and they don't ask for a reference right away. But you should be prepared when they do ask for a reference. You should have some sort of separate reference sheet ready with all of the information that your reference has approved for you to give out. You can bring it to interviews and you can send it promptly when requested. There are some places that ask that you do bring it to your interview and some that don't. So I just always recommend being prepared. So we know why references are important. We know who we should ask, who we probably shouldn't ask. Let's get to the actual interaction with your hopeful reference. And how are we asking folks to do this for us? We are always asking for permission. Whether you are emailing them or you're calling them directly, never list a reference without having cleared it with them. It's not a good practice. I don't encourage it. And it can be really surprising when you receive a phone call one day saying, "Hi, I'm so and so. I work here. We have you listed as a reference for John Smith." And you haven't heard from John Smith. You're sort of taken aback. And then I, as a reference, am not able to give the best recommendation that I could have if I had time to prepare. So you're also harming yourself inadvertently in the process as well when you're not giving your references a heads up or asking for permission to use them. Um, so when you contact them, I recommend saying something pretty direct, like, "Hey, would you feel comfortable serving as a professional reference for me?" Um, the phrase here is do you feel comfortable? Because this gives them an opportunity to decline if they don't feel like they can provide a strong recommendation. They could be in a season of life where they are very, very busy right now and they don't have the time necessarily to wait around at the phone, or they could be honest and say, "Hey, I haven't heard from you in 4 years. Am I really the best person that you want to do this for you?" So give them an opportunity to decline if that's what they think will be best for you in your job search. And like I mentioned earlier, make sure to confirm all of that contact information for when you do share it with your hopeful employer. So you've asked your reference permission. They have said yes. It is wonderful. You need to give them some more context as opposed to just, will you serve as this reference for me? Um, it's important that they know what they are recommending you for, and that could also play a part into whether or not they feel comfortable recommending you for something. If you're making a really large career change, it can help them focus on the transferable skills that you have. So the fact that you come to work every day with a positive attitude, that you are on time, that you're a team player, they can emphasize that information about you as opposed to, if you have been working in the food industry for a while and now you're transitioning into, let's say something like nursing, they will not focus on your exact food industry experience, um, because it won't be relevant to what you're applying for. So, um, I always recommend sending a reference the job description that you have applied for. Then they know exactly what you know about the job. Um, you can also take the opportunity to remind them of any special projects that you worked on together. Um, Especially if it's been a while since you've talked or worked together, you can say, "Hey, do you remember when I did blah 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 blah?" And that'll refresh their memory as well. Share the skills that the employer is seeking. Share your recent accomplishments because I imagine you have done things since the last time you have worked with this person. Um, and when I say share your recent accomplishments, I do mean share your updated resume. That way they are seeing what your hopeful employer is seeing. And it helps them to tailor their recommendation to match what the employer is looking for. If they see on the job description that they're looking for someone to take charge and supervise folks, and they can see that you have some supervisory experience on your resume, they can back that up for you. And also tell them why you want this job to begin with, is it the location? Is it the missions of the company? Is it that you are ready for a challenge? I've had references before who have been asked why I was leaving a position. And so I recommend that you share that with them as well, whether or not it's, I'm looking to make a move, a career move or a personal move. Sharing that with them will help when they are asked questions by the hiring manager. So this is the big how to manage your references. Like I mentioned earlier, prepare them, let them know when they might be contacted. If you have that information from an employer of, hey, we typically reach out to references after your first interview, you can let your reference know, hey, my first interview is next week. I imagine someone will reach out after next week. That helps them to be in the right mindset of knowing what to expect. Or if there may be someone who doesn't answer phone calls from unknown numbers, you can giving them this heads up and this timeline will say, "Hey, I should answer my phone to unknown numbers this week because I've been asked to be a reference." Um, Provide when asked. Don't overshare early in the process. Don't give them too much information about what you're hoping for, what you're applying for, all of those things. Follow up with them, especially with a little thank you note, because this is a favor. This is a professional courtesy and favor that someone is doing on your behalf, and that matters. They're taking time out of their day to help you pursue something for your career. So sending them a little thank you note is very appropriate, and it's a really small gesture. And it can also extend and improve the quality of your relationship with this person. And then keep them updated. Tell them if you get the job. You can tell them in the thank you note. You can call them, email them, and say thank you so much for serving as a reference. I got that job, so thanks for your help with that. Or keep them informed if you're still searching. If you get through the application process and you withdraw your application, or if you're not selected for any reason, you can talk them through that. You can let them know. Because that's, like I said earlier, that's maintaining a relationship in your network, to help with your long-term career growth. Um, so I love a good summary slide, folks. Um, References are important because they validate your resume. They confirm your personality and professionalism. They strengthen your overall position as a candidate as well. Um, and they should only be provided when requested. So references go beyond what is written on paper. So it's important that you're choosing wisely. So if you are, considering your options, I forgot to mention this earlier, but maybe you at your last job, it wasn't a great fit. You maybe weren't going above and beyond. You weren't succeeding in the ways that you wanted to. Maybe if you had any job action for any reason with the previous employer or whatnot, um, I wouldn't recommend them being your first option. If you felt like you dropped the ball a bit in that position, or if you've got any anxieties or any qualms about it, don't ask that person to serve as a reference. Because you really do want someone who's just going to absolutely sing your praises and advocate for you to get this position. And because when that happens, references can absolutely be that thing that secure a final job offer from an employer. All right, I've done a lot of speaking. And so if anyone has any questions about references, anything that I've mentioned earlier today, I encourage you to send something in the chat if you've got a question. You'll also notice in the chat that Debbie's dropped in a link to our survey. And so we just ask that you complete the short survey. It lets us know what you all want to see. It lets us know if this information today was helpful. And so we want to make sure that we're serving your interests in the best way possible. So if you could just take a few moments to fill out that survey, our office would really appreciate it. And finally, this is our contact information. We're located on the Barton campus in Building 122. That's our email and our phone number. If you would like to schedule an appointment for anything, to review a resume, cover letter, do any sort of mock interview, or just talk about anything career related and preparing for that, call us or send us an email to set up an appointment because we would love to meet with you. But if no one has any questions, then that is the end of our Career Tip Tuesday today. So thank you very much for coming out and listening and watching. We really appreciate it, and I hope that you have a great rest of your day. For folks still on the line, um, if you don't have any other questions, we don't close the Zoom room until everyone has left, just in case anyone has questions.